biology
Truth
studies.
in Broadcasting. Thom Hartmann here with you. Welcome back. Okay, it's our Geeky Science segment. It's a brief segment that we do once a week where we just go through my favorite science news of the week. I confess, I'm a science geek. I got a science scholarship to MSU when I was 14 years old. I've been a science geek my whole life. I'm a member of AAAS. I subscribe to Science and Nature and New Scientist and Science News and even occasionally find them in the newspaper. Here, this one, Gene. So I want to share my science stories for the week with you. Chimps may be our nearest relatives, but they don't talk, and we do. Why is it that we share between 97 and 98% of our genome with them, and yet they don't talk? Well, scientists think that they have found the gene. It's called the FOXP2 gene, and a mutation on that gene seems to have allowed for our ability to speak. It's missing in most of the other primates. And the question now is, how and when and why did that gene evolve? The when is probably something that will be figured out in the next year or two. The how or why. Why did speech become a positive adaptation, an adaptation that helped us? I would submit to you that early hunter-gatherers used it just the same way that you and I are, to share information and to make us more efficient at what we do. And I think a lot of other species do the same. They just do it in perhaps a less sophisticated way than we do, perhaps in some cases even or as sophisticated, if you've listened to whale calls recently, for example. So anyway, I found that fascinating. They've discovered a new dinosaur species, Arondix celestiae, and in Johannesburg. And what's interesting about this is that this dinosaur that they've found stood about 6 feet tall, walked on its back 2 legs. It's about 200 million years old, from the Jurassic period. And Mr. Yates, paleontologist Adam Yates, believes that it represents the missing evolutionary link between dinosaurs and their earlier descendants. You'll recall, those of you who were watching or listening a few weeks ago, we did in our Geeky Science segment, did a piece about how we've discovered the missing evolutionary link in humans, the long-sought evolutionary link. Well, now they've found one in dinosaurs. Whether Tom Coburn likes it or not, evolution and science marches on. That would be the crazy senator, Tom Coburn. A UK study on using human DNA in animals. This is just a heads up here. British scientists began a study on Tuesday to consider how much human DNA is being used in animal experiments and to determine the boundaries of this controversial practice. Though experts have been swapping human and animal DNA for years, this is Maria Cheng, by the way, writing for the Associated Press. We replace animal genes with human genes, and we grow human organs in animals. Scientists at the Academy of Medical Sciences want to make sure the public is aware of what's happening in laboratories before proceeding further. Seems like a good step to me. We need to move these things forward. Here's some of the weirdest facts, science facts, and there's some goodies here from physics and relativity to quantum physics. Almost all of the universe is missing. Yep. There's probably more than 100 billion galaxies. You look up at the star at night, and an awful lot, in fact, the majority of those dots you see are not stars, they are galaxies. Like our galaxy, the Milky Way. A galaxy can have between 10 million and a trillion stars in it. So that single dot of light could be as many as 1 trillion stars. There's over 100 billion of these galaxies. And yet all of that only accounts for 2% of the mass in the universe. Now, there's this other thing called dark energy, and they're trying to figure out how much of this is dark matter, how much of this is dark energy, where's the missing mass? Nobody's figured this out yet. I find it, every year there's a story about the dark matter and the missing mass and the new theory. Still, nobody's figured it out. Things can travel faster than light, and light sometimes doesn't travel that fast. They have actually slowed light down. The record slowest speed is 17 meters a second, 38 miles an hour. That's running it through rubidium, cooled to almost absolute zero. That's how slow light can go. And it's supposed to be a constant, 360,000 kilometers a second, 386, as I recall, thousand or million miles per second. But speed does not always travel through vacuum or water, and sometimes nuclear reactors, these particles are forced up to very high speeds, often within a fraction of the speed of light. So in fact, there have been a couple of cases lately where it's traveled faster than the speed of light, which is causing some considerable rethinking now of some of Einstein's theories. Fascinating stuff. This is one that I love. This is about dyslexia. Dyslexics, Ron Davis is a friend of mine, and he and I used to do back when I was writing books on attention deficit disorder and psychotherapy, and used to do a lot of lecture circuit stuff and speak at conferences on psychology and psychotherapy and education. And Ron was doing the same thing. We lectured together in the United States, in the UK, in Southeast Asia, in Singapore. And Ron founded a foundation down in California around dyslexia. He wrote a book called The Gift of Dyslexia. And what he found was, he himself was profoundly dyslexic. What he found was that the vast majority, my recollection was it was 100%, but it's been a decade or more since I talked to Ron, so I don't want to quote these statistics from memory. But he found that the vast majority of working sculptors in the United States, people who actually work with three-dimensional material and are so good at it and successful at it that they can make a living, that virtually all of them were profoundly dyslexic. And his theory was that dyslexia was actually a skill, a talent. It was the ability to detach your attentional mechanism from the back of your head and let it float around and look from the front, look from the sides, things like that. And the problem was that when kids were trying to read, sometimes they were looking from upside down or backwards. And he teaches how to lock your attention in. Okay, well, here's a step further. This is the latest science. Researchers say that unlike most people, dyslexic children and adults have trouble hearing teachers and reading above the background din of classroom noise. An easy solution is to move dyslexic kids to the front of the room. But I think that it validates Ron Davis's theory and makes me want to go back and once again read his book, The Gift of Dyslexia. So, interesting stuff. Our Geeky Science segment for the day. We'll be back with your calls. Stick around.